Plutarch's Lives, translated by John Dryden, revised by Arthur Hugh Clough. We're going to at least start the comparison of Numa with Lycurgus. Having thus finished the lives of Lycurgus and Numa, we shall now, though the work be difficult, put together their points of difference as they lie here before our view. Their points of likeness are obvious: their moderation, their religion, their capacity of government and discipline. They're both deriving their laws and constitutions from what they consider to be gods, yet in their common glories there are circumstances of diversity. For first, Numa accepted and Lycurgus resigned a kingdom. Numa received without desiring it. Lycurgus had it and gave it up. The one from a private person and a stranger was raised by others to be their king. The other from the condition of a prince voluntarily descended to the state of privacy. It was glorious to acquire a throne by justice, yet more glorious to prefer justice before a throne. The same virtue which made one appear worthy of regal power exalted the other to the disregard of it. Lastly, as the musicians tuned their harps, so the one let down the high-flown spirits of the people at Rome to a lower key, as the other screwed them up at Sparta to a higher note when they were sunken low by dissoluteness and riot. The harder task was that of Lycurgus, for it was not so much his business to persuade his citizens to put off their armor and ungird their swords as to cast away their gold or silver and abandon costly furniture and rich tables, nor was it necessary to preach to them that, laying aside their arms, they should observe the festivals and sacrifice to the entities, but rather that, giving up feasting and drinking, they should employ their time in laborious and martial exercises. Well, maybe some of that too. So that while the one effected all by persuasions and his people's love for him, the other with the danger and hazard of his person, scarcely in the end succeeded. Numa's muse was a gentle and loving inspiration, fitting him well to turn and soothe his people into peace and justice out of their violent and fiery tempers, whereas, if we must admit the treatment of the Helots to be a part of Lycurgus's legislation, a most cruel and iniquitous proceeding, we must own that Numa was by a great deal the more humane and Greek-like legislator, granting even to actual slaves a license to sit at meat with their masters at the feast of Saturn, that they also might have some taste and relish of the sweets of liberty. For this custom too is ascribed to Numa, whose wish was, they conceive, to give a place in the enjoyment of the yearly fruits of the soil to those who had helped to produce them. Others will have it to be in remembrance of the age of Saturn, when there was no distinction between master and slave, but all lived as brothers and as equals in a condition of equality. And one of the things that a person finds in Islamic society is that, well, not only they didn't fight wars to gain slaves, that was not permitted, but slaves are given the same food and drink as their overseers or masters or whatever you want to call them. And of course they're treated with respect, and they're allowed to attend the places of worship and even lead services at the places of worship and several. So anyways, to keep it short, in general, it seems that both aimed at the same design and intent, which was to bring their people to moderation and frugality. But of other virtues, the one set his affection most on fortitude, and the other on justice, unless we will attribute their different ways to the different habits and temperaments which they had to work upon their enactments. For Numa did not out of cowardice or fear affect peace, but because he would not be guilty of injustice, nor did Lycurgus promote a spirit of war in his people, that they might do injustice to others, but that they might protect themselves by it. In bringing the habits they formed in their people to a just and happy mean, mitigating them where they exceeded and strengthening them where they were deficient, both were compelled to make great innovations. The frame of government which Numa formed was democratic and popular to the last extreme. Goldsmiths and flute players and shoemakers constituting his promiscuous, many-colored commonality. Lycurgus was rigid and aristocratical, banishing all the base and mechanical arts to the company of servants and strangers, and allowing the true citizens no implements but the spear and shield, the trade of war only, and the service of Mars, and no other knowledge or study but that of obedience to their commanding officers and victory over their enemies. Every sort of money-making was forbid them as freemen, and to make them thoroughly so, and keep them so through their whole lives. Every conceivable concern with money was handed over, with the cooking and the waiting at table, to slaves and helots. But Numa made none of these distinctions. He only suppressed military rapacity, allowing free scope to every other means of obtaining wealth, nor did he endeavor to do away with inequality in this respect, but permitted riches to be amassed to any extent, and paid no attention to the gradual and continual augmentation and influx of poverty, which it was his business at the outset, whilst there was no great disparity in the estates of men, and whilst people still lived much in one manner, to obviate, as Lycurgus did, and take measures of precaution against the mischiefs of avarice, mischiefs not of small importance, but the real seed and first beginning of all the great and extensive evils of after times. The redivision of estates Lycurgus is not, it seems to me, to be blamed for making, nor Numa for omitting. This equality was the basis and foundation of one commonwealth, but at Rome, where the lands had been lately divided, there was nothing to urge any redivision or disturbance of the first arrangement, which was